if you just talk about anxiety, I don't want to trivialize it for other people, because sometimes it's just the sheer willpower, the energy just to get up and do anything, never mind move your body. But even if you just start with a walk, it's just like, take 500 meters, take a kilometer, go do a park run on the weekend, which you can also walk, you don't have to run it, where you distract yourself. It's people are struggling in this day and age, and I guess the title is really just about what we don't see. I can look at you across this table and we're smiling and joking, but you could have a whole nother world going on in your head. I don't know what's happened to you in the last week or the last year or the last 5 minutes. And I think there's that famous quote that says, in a world where you can be anything, just be kind. And I think it's so true, because you just don't know what people are going through. Initial prognosis a year before was like, you're probably going to have the surgery in the next 3 to 5 years. We thought, okay, we've got time, let's figure this out, we'll plan, we'll think about it, travel a bit. It ended up, I write about it in the book, but he said, listen, when I went to the surgeon, he said, so should we, I just said, can I just need to chat to my wife about the timing and that, and it was a Monday. And he said, so should I cancel the Wednesday appointment for the surgery? And I was like, I laughed, and he was like, had a dead straight face, and I was like, oh, okay, so you had actually booked for Wednesday. So that was like, okay, this is pretty urgent.
Welcome to the Leadership Summit of the Year. Yes, this is it. Hello, I'm Dr. Mandaj Flaro, and on this week's episode of the SuperLead Podcast series, we are joined by Brandon Fairweather. He's a seasoned brand leader with over 2 decades of experience. Brandon shares his deeply personal journey through major health challenges and how that shaped his perspective on anxiety, resilience, and purpose. And in this conversation, we explore his story and his book, The Hell Inside Our Heads, unpacking practical tools to turn adversity into strength. Brandon, welcome to SuperLead Podcast.
Thank you so much, Manda.
Lovely. So Brandon, you've written this incredible book called The Hell Inside Our Heads, Managing Anxiety and Practical Steps for Better Mental Health. So we're going to unpack the book during this time together. But before we get to the book, which is also part of the book,
yes.
Just tell our listeners, who is Brandon?
Sure. Well, I'm 43 years of age, Brandon Fairweather, and I've been working in marketing most of my life. Studied a BCom in marketing. Not as qualified as you yet, but maybe one day. But I always was fairly academic at school. Played a bit of sport, but was born with a congenital aortic valve defect. So what that means in more layman's terms is when you're born, your heart has 3 sort of leaflets in a valve, and a tricuspid valve is one with those 3 leaflets, and I was born with 2, which basically just meant from birth they said you'd have to have heart surgery to correct that at a later stage. So I always knew from a young age that I'd have to have heart surgery, but they kind of said, listen, probably around this age, they said like 40 to mid 40s, that's typically when people have it done. But I led a pretty active lifestyle, had some limitations obviously in school, so I played as much sport as I could, but always could feel in certain things, if I overexerted, I felt a bit of strain, couldn't quite keep up quite the same. But I always, for my condition, I think I was pretty competitive, but always struggled a bit with like faster running, cross country, that sort of thing. And as I grew older, basically just got more and more active, got into gym, and the older I got, the more comfortable I was with the situation. It wasn't as protective. I did more things. I did mountain biking, I played soccer, loved it. And in 2010, had a bit of a bad experience on one of these mountain biking races. I wasn't feeling so great. Went back the next week with my friend to try and do the same course because we were struggling on the hills. So I thought, okay, there's obviously, I need to get stronger at this. I wasn't even thinking about the heart at that stage. And later that day, ended up in hospital. Some enzymes were released into the bloodstream. And it was kind of the beginning of that reminder of, okay, the surgery needs to take place. On the day, they actually said to me, you'd have to have heart surgery that day. So I got a bit of a fright. And then once the other doctor came to see me, he said, no, listen, it's just the thing with the enzymes, so some technicality, but I was in ICU for 2 days and then released soon after. But after that, I had to go to the cardiologist again. And it became quite a defining thing in my life. I think, I was quite protected in that way. I was telling coaches, kind of imposing limitations on myself. Yes. There was a physical, legitimate limitation, but the way that I approached sport was just different. I didn't always enjoy it as much. If I went on roller coasters, the way I experienced adrenaline wasn't the same as my friends. They were loving it. I was hating life. Sure. And I had this constant narrative of, this is bad for you. Yeah. And so that wasn't a great way to prime anybody for sort of medical anxiety, which is something I talk about in the book. And ended up having heart surgery a year later.
And how old are you now at 2010?
I'm 43. I was 2010 I would have been 27 because I had the surgery at 28. So still young, pretty active, was enjoying life, was trying to get fitter, stronger, leaner, as we all do. Had met my wife and back in 2006, 2005 now. And so we went through that process, about a year of a lot of ups and downs, kind of just trying to figure things out, getting less fit, starting to struggle. There were some legitimate failures starting to happen. I would say about a year later, had to make the decision, went to see my original cardiologist that I saw when I was young. And he always had a very interesting bedside manner. He was very blunt and direct. And, don't worry, you're fine. Don't waste your time. He was that sort of guy. A very good doctor, though. The guy who actually ended up being involved in the surgery, Dr. Rob Routier at Olivedale Clinic. And he was very quiet in that appointment. So this was in 2011 now, and basically just said, I want you to come back next week to see a specialist, the cardiothoracic surgeon, and said, listen, we think it's time to get this done. We can't tell you when to do it, but his words were, and I'll never forget them, he said, just don't miss the boat. So I was like, okay, well, this is not like because the initial prognosis a year before was like, you're probably going to have the surgery in the next 3 to 5 years. We thought, okay, we've got time, let's figure this out, we'll plan, we'll think about it, travel a bit. It ended up, I write about it in the book, but he said, listen, when I went to the surgeon, he said, so should we, I just said, can I just need to chat to my wife about the timing and that? And it was a Monday. And he said, so should I cancel the Wednesday appointment for the surgery? And I was like, I laughed, and he was like, had a dead straight face. And I was like, oh, okay, so you had actually booked for Wednesday. So that was like, okay, this is pretty urgent. I ended up having the surgery a week later. We went for dinner, pretty somber mood, but it was just kind of like, listen, this sounds pretty serious now. So did the surgery, thank God, very successful, and to this day, one of the best things that's ever happened to me. But when I was in ICU, the cardiologist came to me and said, listen, if you had left this thing for another 2 weeks, your heart would have, your aorta was in an aneurysmic state. So what happens is, because of the limitation on the valve, and again, I don't want to sound too technical, but it's almost like putting your finger on a hose pipe. So the blood starts to put pressure through. And inflates the aorta. And my aorta, the typical human aorta, the dimensions are about 2.3 to 2.5 centimeters wide, and mine had ballooned to 5.3. So it was looking pretty dangerous. And he said, listen, a couple more weeks and this thing would have burst and you would have died. So that was like, wow. And we didn't take it casually, but we were like, okay, let's just do this. It seems like the right thing. It wasn't like oh my gosh, we have to do it now. So that was the story, and the book just tells the story of some of the complications I had around leading up to that. There was a lot of anxiety around the different sensations, sometimes just losing a breath, wondering if it's failing, what's happening. And I think just the years before that of having this constant reminder of something's wrong, you've got to be careful, don't do this, don't do that. It was quite a stressful time.
And you also talk about being born with this, you're predisposed to anxiety. And the different episodes of panic attack, etc. Maybe just that lane as well.
So in the book, I just write about the fact that everybody has different levels. I mean, to me, what I've experienced and learned to understand about anxiety, it's not something you beat, it's something you manage. It's part of our human condition. And in the same way, I wouldn't quite say it's an emotion, but it's an emotional state. And to me, what I've discovered is, in the way that you don't beat anger or sadness or happiness, you don't beat anxiety, you manage it. And I think certain people have a different chemical makeup in their brains, and either based on trauma or just life experiences. I think, having heightened levels of worry can vary between people based on their circumstances. And I certainly found as a child, whether it was because of that, maybe it was just how I was wired chemically.
Sure.
But I was someone who was a little bit more anxious as a child. I would, care deeply. I'm deeply empathetic by personality. So I think those sort of traits was, this perfect storm combination of someone who had a legitimate physical heart condition combined with a personality that was over-caring, over-worrying.
Sure.
And so I think growing up experienced a lot of that anxiety. But when you're younger, you don't know what it's called. You don't know why it is. You just feel a certain way. And it's not that I had this terrible upbringing. I've got a wonderful family. I've been so blessed.
Yeah. And just elaborate on your family as well. Just
I'm
beautiful upbringing.
Absolutely,
and yet this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I've got 2 loving parents. Some people come from broken homes. I've had parents who've been married for nearly 60 years now, and just wonderful examples. Brought up in a Christian home, and that, for me, again, my faith has been a part of what's helped me through this journey.
Excellent.
But I'm very respectful of all beliefs, and I think for me it's more about having this higher power, or there's something bigger than ourselves that has helped. So whether you call that God or deity or any other name that you have, for me it's more the principle thing.
Sure.
One of 4 boys, so I'm the second born. I've got an older brother and 2 younger ones. The third born was also a twin, and the twin died at birth.
Sure.
So we've experienced quite a few things as a family. I've had my dad was an entrepreneur. He's made some successful businesses, but he's also lost money and been unlucky and unfortunate. Has also had some of his own health scares. So there's been areas of plenty and areas of nothing. And so I know both sides of that coin.
Sure.
and learned as good lessons from either end, more so from the times that were harder. And I suppose that's a central theme that comes from that book.
Sure.
But one of 4 boys, so lots of sport in the household. So I always try to keep up with the rest, but had some disadvantages, I guess.
Sure. And why will anyone spend the hours and the days and the editing? I've written a book. I'm in the process of writing one now.
Yes.
And it's painful. Why would you go through all of that?
Yeah, I found it quite the opposite, if I'm honest.
Okay.
I mean, it's hard work, and I don't want to take away from that because it has taken time.
Yeah.
What I would say, and I do mention it, is that this is probably the second proper attempt, but probably the third attempt. I started writing it or typing it many years ago, and then my laptop was stolen, and true to rookie error, I hadn't had it backed up. We had a rental car that was broken into, and my work laptop was stolen. And then the second time we had moved overseas, I started writing some things by hand and kind of started to kickstart the process again. So that part's been painful in kind of having good content, feeling like, man, this is good, and then it all goes.
Yes.
But I think it was always inside, it was just kind of restarting that. But for me, when I say it was quite the opposite, is that I got to a point at one stage with my anxiety that it was absolutely debilitating. Sure. I was once at a shoot, and there's a picture of it in the book, where Longevity magazine, because of the industry that I'm involved in, had featured me as a health hero. And I just thought on that day, it was such an irony. They were speaking about the heart surgery, but on the day of the shoot, I had the most debilitating anxiety ever. And I even had to get my dad to drop me off there because I couldn't drive. I was petrified something was going to happen in traffic. Crazy and ridiculous as that. But your mind spirals to that low. And I think I just got to a point where I'd been seeing a psychologist, I'd been taking medication, I'd started to improve my sleep, I was trying to do all the right things, and I was still experiencing these things, and I was just like, this has to be for something. That is where this came from. It was like, well, let me start writing. I didn't start writing thinking it would be a book. I really thought I would just write it almost as a diary of thoughts. Maybe it'll be a podcast, maybe it'll be a website, maybe it'll be a downloadable PDF that I can help some people. But I was just like, well, this pain has to be for something. I've got to be able to help people do something with this, so let's see where it goes. And then I think in the last 3 years, it became more intentional, where I started to share with people what I've been doing. And they were like, you should tell the story more out there, it could help a lot of people. And I thought, well, what better way to do it than to put it in a book? And as you know, with books, and with writing, you've got to be quite intentional with it. Yeah. So before I met my publisher, Tracy McDonald, who's been amazing.
She's phenomenal.
And you know her as well. I noticed
she's tough.
Yeah, I need it though. I'm that guy who needs someone to crack the whip.
Too.
And I'm not that I'm lazy, but I need someone
Tracy,
to be like,
you are tough.
Yeah, but we love you. But yeah, she's been amazing. But I think until I had that time, it was just my own project. So there was no deadline. And
Yes.
I would write intently
That
for like 3
deadline.
months.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it was like, now there was someone I was accountable to. And I think my personality is I need someone to say, you need this by this date and this time. And I was still late, but I still got as close as I could.
There we go, Tracy. You got grace also, so extend the same level of grace.
No, she was kind. She gave me an extra week because I had to finish.
I did a little bit more than
Yeah. I always just push the boundary. And also, I'm like you. I mean, just speaking to you this morning, I realized we're both perfectionists. So, like, once I'd written, I was like,
no.
I was like, no, this is not good enough. I need to go again and check it again and proofread it again. And so I think my family's sick of reading it now. I asked them all to check everything. But just very proud. I think, as you know, this is my first book, and I hope to write many more.
Excellent.
And we'll talk about that just now. But it was cathartic. It was therapeutic for me.
Excellent.
I think the idea of creating something of my own that could genuinely help people is the purpose behind it. It's like, well, what did I learn through my experiences, and how can I share that with the world? And I know that people are struggling in this day and age, and I guess the title is really just about what we don't see. I can look at you across this table and we're smiling and joking, but you could have a whole nother world going on in your head. I don't know what's happened to you in the last week or the last year or the last 5 minutes.
Sure.
And I think, there's that famous quote that says, in a world where you can be anything, just be kind. And I think it's so true, because you just don't know what people are going through. Even your own staff, your colleagues, sometimes we upset that they're late or that they missed a deadline or whatever, but there could be a whole trauma going on in their world, and I suppose it's about unpacking. And even in my world, if the world that I work, you might not expect that someone like me has battled with such severe anxiety.
Sure. I would love us, I know that you say in the book that you're not a medical doctor, but you've gone in to do some research. I would love for you to just unpack this a little bit slowly. So what actually happens? What does this hell look like? Because we all show up here, we all dressed up, we do what we need to do, and yet there's an underworld, or there's a world in one's head.
Absolutely.
It's kind of some of those, I don't know if it's possible to reenact some of those.
I think the medical stuff and the biological stuff, I definitely won't speak to as naturally, because it's not my forte. And I suppose what I've written has been mostly research that I'm sharing. So again, I qualified because I understand that mental health is a sensitive topic. So I can't go out there and prescribe this as the way that you fix mental health. It's my experiences. It's expertise by experience, not by studying or academia. And for me, to answer the question, physiologically, your body has triggers, and it's wired. Your nervous system is wired to react to different things. One of the sort of subtitles in one of the chapters I say in there is that your brain wasn't designed to make you happy.
Yes, I saw that.
We almost why is this brain not making me happy? It's because your brain was designed to help you survive, to help you survive life. And if you think of yourself, if you were put on an island and there were all sorts of creatures and things, and you had to find food and you had to fend off monsters and bears and tigers and whatever else, your body would kick into that physiological fight or flight reaction. And for me, the most simple way I could explain anxiety, the way I've experienced it, is that it's misplaced fight or flight. It's almost like a fight or flight reaction that triggers at an inappropriate time. And those triggers can come from trauma, it can come from a chemical misfiring, it can come from a whole bunch of different things. And we unpack it in the book with more detail. But I think that's the easiest way to explain it. It's almost like if you think about how a panic attack occurs, if you've ever had one, you'll just be sitting minding your own business, sometimes after a really nice holiday or even a night out or something, and you wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, in shortness of breath, those horrible physiological responses. And I think it's more traumatizing because there's no catalyst for it. It's not like someone's broken into your home, or someone's hit you across the head or shouted at you, or it's not like anything's happened, or you've got a fright in a movie. You just wake up, or you just suddenly have this cold feeling come over you. Your body starts to fight off an invisible enemy, and that to me is the best way to explain anxiety. It's just misplaced physiological reactions that shouldn't be taking that place at that time. And part of what I've learned is to understand why those happen at that time, what is causing the firing, and to dig deeper, and to not just accept it as, oh, I'm an anxious person. Like, everybody's an anxious person. You're also a happy person and a sad person. These are emotional states, and I suppose it's understanding what those triggers are. And some, it's much more deep rooted. It could be something that happened when you were a child. I know mine was 99% related to the medical condition and the fears around that and what I interpreted as a weak heart or a failing heart that could just give up on me at any stage.
Sure.
And so my biggest thing was learning to trust my body again.
Sure.
But yeah, I've digressed from the question.
No,
like I warned you.
it's beautiful. And what are some of these reasons for the triggers and some of the things in our environment that might trigger us?
I think for the average person where you don't have deep-rooted trauma, it's just the modern day world that we live in. It's just such a high-pressured world. The availability of news, good and bad, excitement, access to whatever we want, lifestyles that we see on social media. I don't believe that social media is the cause for anxiety, but I don't think it helps someone who's predisposed to that or is going through heightened spells. It can be a lot of things. It can be your own health. It can be a lack of movement, lack of exercise, stress levels, wars around the world.
Sure.
So there's a lot of practical things that we experiencing, and living in a big city. I mean, we live in Johannesburg. Just driving to work every day can be an experience. Guys shouting in the traffic, accidents.
Yeah.
Being late for work, the constant pressure of society.
Sure.
There's so many factors, it's hard to pinpoint some of those triggers, but for me, it was something deeper. It was something that's been lifelong, and this lack of trust in my body. So for my specific condition, it was more around medical anxiety. And in the book, there's a chapter where I take you through 10 different types of anxiety, and you can read about that. Some of it is just GAD, or generalized anxiety disorder, and that's probably the most common, where people just have a chemical imbalance or a reaction to something or delayed reaction to something. Because it's often that thing, right? I mean, if you've been working really hard, sometimes you'll push hard, not getting enough sleep, and you'll get that feeling of, okay, now it's done, now I can have a holiday.
Yeah.
How many people take that break and experience heightened levels of stress in their first 2 or 3 days?
Yeah.
If you've taken a holiday after an extended period of hard work or exercise or something stressful on your body, you only experience it afterwards, not in the moment. The storm sometimes comes afterwards. So it's always this delayed reaction. There's very little times where, in my experience, most times in the height of a particular situation, let's just say there's an attempted break-in or someone bashes into your car or you get a fright, there's almost a strange calm in the moment. Your body is wired to contain that.
Fight there.
And that's why it's actually experienced something. And there's a beautiful book called The Body Keeps the Score that my oncologist shared with me. And it's about how your body does absorb that stress and it does experience it, but it just displays it at a later stage. So I think that's been a learning for me. Just because you didn't feel it, it doesn't mean it's not coming or that it hasn't experienced some sort of trauma.
And how might we sort of manage this better? You say that it can't just be cured. And also it didn't. The anxiety will have built over time, so it's not something that we can just expect it to go away now. What are some of the helpful things we can do?
What I try to unpack in the book is the things that I experienced. So there is a section or a couple of sections where I take you through practical tips.
Yes, please.
In one of the chapters, I even talk through specific strategies you can adopt during a panic attack. So that's almost phase 2. That's almost like when you're there, when it's arrived, now you're in the eye of the storm, so to speak. So we can go through those. But for me, I think what's more important is the lifestyle factors, the history, the trauma, to unpack that. Of how did you get there? Why are these things happening and why do they keep happening? And I think if you can do that, you'll have to do less of the short-term strategies where it could just be recurring. And in my experience, I found some of those were helpful, but it was almost like I needed something bigger. I can't just keep going through the steps and being, okay, let's sit on the floor, let's relax, let's do the breathing. There's lots of things you can do in the very moment. Go make a cup of tea, phone somebody, talk to somebody. There's physiological things you can do. Something I learned about only recently, and I wish I learned it earlier. There's a nerve in your body called the vagus nerve. And it's something that connects all your vital organs. So it goes from your brain to your heart, to your gut, to your lungs. And it connects all those vital parts. And there's certain things that happen. And so I learned about little techniques of when you stimulate that vagus nerve, it helps calm your nervous system, helps regulate it better. But I only learned that probably while writing the book. And I wish I'd learned it earlier, because there were things I was doing, like speaking to somebody, singing, humming, listening to music. There's physiological things that you can do in the heat of the moment
to help regulate.
But I just thought they were like psychological tools of, okay, let's go make some tea, let's go for a walk. But there were certain things like fresh air, all that sort of stuff. So you just saw it as a coping strategy, whereas actually there was a physiological reaction. So even as you talk, something that was like an epiphany for me, and it probably seems so simple, but even talking right now, there's a level of calm because you actually, these vibrations as we speak, that vagus nerve is being stimulated, and it actually helps you relax. So there's things like that I was like, man, it's so simple, but it's mind-blowing. And you actually think it's the psychology of, I need to see a psychologist or a specialist or a friend, but it's the physical sensation that's also calming, not just getting your thoughts out.
Wow. And I imagine in this state, one probably might feel like they want to isolate and stay indoors or lock themselves away. But I think it's probably helpful to get out there, talk to someone, be in community.
Absolutely. And I mean, having been there myself, I know, like I said, you know, the idea of writing about this experience came from the worst spells of anxiety where I felt that way. I didn't want to socialize, didn't want to go to parties anymore, didn't even want to go to bars, even family functions. It was a lot for me to take in. And I think I'm very careful to say to people, okay, go out there now, because you could be in that moment where I was. And I know it wasn't A to B for me. It was like a slow process of reintegrating, starting to unpack all the things. And that's why I think it's not a quick...
What does it look like to be a lot for you? So let's say there's a birthday party, old mate, friend, and then you're naturally invited.
Yeah.
What happens? You would just be like...
Yeah, I mean, I went through a phase where I would go against my own will, and I was like, well, I've got to just do this, and it was really tough. And again, I suppose that's the hell inside our heads, because you go to the party, you show up, you smile, you joke. I think people who know you see that something's off. But for the rest of the people, it's just you there. You wouldn't notice it. Like, why would you? It's not like a visible cut or a scar or something. That's what's so hard about it. You know?
But you will just feel like you don't want to go. You don't have the energy to go.
You can't even. If I look back now, I couldn't tell you the logic. I don't think there is logic behind it. It goes back to that fight or flight response, and you're just trying to flight something. You can't even say what. And I think that's the part that drives most people borderline insane, is like I can't say to you, oh, I got hit in the head and you can see my cut or my wound or something. It's just like, and most people are like, but what's wrong? You can't actually tell people, because it's a psychological thing, it's a chemical thing, it's something internal. But to get back to your question, for me it would take a lot of energy to just show up and just be normal, you know, at that time. And I think it's a slow unpacking of why is this happening, and to keep asking the right questions, and to just go again. And sometimes if it's too much, to just turn it down. There's no pride or, well, should I say, there's no shame in not going to something. No one really minds, and especially if a couple of people know you're going through some stuff, to just say, like, listen, it's a tough spell at the moment. And I probably went through about a year of that, you know, maybe 3 years, but more intently about a year process where it was just a lot of work to travel, to drive, to, you know, that trust in my body was a big deal. And
you wouldn't train, I imagine.
So I would, but again, it was like this thing where, and again, it was such a, it was like a 50-50 thing where, you know, you need to move, but I was also scared of, is there something wrong with the heart still? You know, and I'm talking early days, you know, the year or two after the heart surgery, where the logic would be, okay, well, it's fixed now.
Yes.
We don't have to have anxiety anymore. But no, there's new things. I mean, part of the physical process and the surgery itself is they saw through your sternum. If you're slightly older, there's keyhole surgery, which they do much more. It's much smarter, so they don't do open heart surgery. But mine was an open heart surgery. I was actually disappointed. I wanted to share the picture. I know most people wouldn't have liked it, but I was disappointed because I had the picture of my actual open heart from the cardiothoracic surgeon. But it was one of the pictures I lost when that laptop was stolen. So, and I reached out to him recently. He was like, listen, man, I probably don't have it. That was, you know, it's 2011. So he can tell me what he's got from last week. But
sure.
But just getting back to that thing of, you know, just trusting your body. There was new sensations. You would have deferred pains from the actual cut. You know, my whole right side of my chest had collapsed on the right side because they cut through the muscle as well. So you have to rebuild that. So just, you know, you were talking about exercise. That's one of the things where I'm like, you need to be exercising. But sometimes I'd be like, is this good? Is it bad? Well, then I would do it, but then feel something and then kind of say, okay, well, I'm going to take a break for like 2 weeks. I'm not going to exercise now. So it was a really messy, uncomfortable, unpleasant time of knowing that, okay, I know that I need to get fitter, I need to walk. So what I did do, though, was then just defer to, okay, well, let me not do gym then. Let me just go for walks and let me just do some sort of exercise where it's more intentional breathing, get a little sweat in, you know. So I still maintain that. And I think for people that don't have a medical condition, or like mine was quite different, if you just talk about anxiety, I don't want to trivialize it for other people, because sometimes it's just the sheer willpower, the energy just to get up and do anything, never mind move your body. But even if you just start with a walk, it's just like take 500 meters, take a kilometer, go do a park run on the weekend, which you can also walk, you don't have to run it, where you distract yourself, you know. I had to be careful of like limiting my caffeine intake, sometimes just taking too much coffee. I love my coffee.
Yeah,
today,
same.
I'm so glad, because I love a good Seattle.
Yeah.
Giving them a free plug here, but I'm almost got a small addiction to Seattle. And, you know, back then, and it was sometimes if I had too much coffee, I would just notice, like, obviously it increases your heart rate, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, what's happening? So it was a lot more sensitive back then. And I think it's been the biggest thing I would say to people is it's like, you know, it's a learning process, but it's also an unlearning of old habits, of old fears, to get rid of that and to shake it. And it takes time. So your original question was like, what do you do in the eye of the storm? And I think there's two parts. There's steps that I cover in the book of what you can do in an actual panic attack. Yeah. Some examples are, like I said, getting grounded, sitting close to the floor, taking more intentional breathing, slow breaths in and very slow breaths out. You know, there's techniques like that. Talking to somebody is helpful. Kind of having a wingman or wingwoman that you can speak to that understands it, that gets it. I always found it was helpful to have people who are more empathetic, who are like, oh, shame, I get it, I've been through it. And that's part of what the one angle of the book is. And in the same way, the other angle of the book is the tough love, the drill sergeant who's like, come on, shake this off. Come, we're going, we're doing this. Come out with us, you will come. You can't just have one or the other. If you just have the softer approach, you'll stay where you are. Yeah. And you just stay in this woe is me or shame mentality. But you've got to get the other person who motivates you and drives you. And I'm hoping that the book strikes that balance. You know?
When did you get to this point where you go, no, man, I'm going to get myself out of this?
Yeah. It was slow. I can't say it was one particular moment. Yeah. It was just, I mean, the case I keep referring back to was a day where I was at home. I didn't want to go to work. I couldn't even tell, you know, you can't say to people, I'm sick or I've got a headache, or I just couldn't go. I couldn't tell you why. I didn't want to. I suppose it's close to what I've heard people who experience severe depression go through, where it just takes a lot to, like to you and I, we wake up this morning, we're ambitious, we're ready, we have our coffee, we go train if you do, and you hit your day and you go chase the world and chase greatness, you know, like I don't know how, I can't honestly tell you how I got from that point to this one. And all I can say is it was just slow and steady, and it was just this constant decision to be like, show up again another day. And the biggest reason for the book is to tell people that, is to say like, maybe there's just one thing that can, when you are in that lowest of low, and maybe some people aren't that bad, maybe they're kind of 50% or just in a dip in terms of their psychology or their mental state. It's just to say, well, go another day, just try again, try something new, try something different. And that's the one thing I would say is I didn't stop exploring options. You know, for me, there was no like, it's over, I'm done with this life. You know, like, for me, it was always like, speak to another person, go to a new psychologist, try a different sport, go play tennis, go do something.
Lovely.
And exercise was the biggest one for me. Running's changed my life. That's honestly one of the things.
You say in the book that what do you call it? The park runs change your life.
Yeah.
Just let's do a shout out to park runs.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, what a great thing for South Africa and globally. I mean, it started in the UK. They've been going over 20 years. I think it's 21 years now, if I'm not mistaken. South Africa is 14 years. Might be 15 years this year. And it's I mean, no big surprise. It's been set up by Bruce Fordyce in South Africa, but taking the lead from the UK, from a guy who started it there with just a bunch of people to say, let's go for a run together. And what's beautiful about parkrun is that anyone can come. You know, there's no like, you can.
It's not like the top runners.
Yeah, you can be Kipchoge or Gerda or you know some of these top runners and come and run it in 14, 15 minutes. And then there's people that go for a walk with their dogs, with their children, grannies and grandpas with walking sticks, injured people. You go at your own pace and you finish, and people see constant improvements. They see slight weight loss changes. We, through the company I work for, we got invited to sponsor parkrun many years ago, and I didn't kind of understand what it was, because I was like, it's not a race, it's not a mass participation event, but everyone gets there and they get a time. So how does this work, and who pays for it? You know, and they know Discovery Vitality has been really good, so shout out to them for funding it for so many years, and obviously it makes sense for their business as well. But Discim is now involved as well, and we're very proud to be involved in it as an initiative that helps people just improve their health and wellness. For me, it started with the mental wellness. It was like getting fresh air, having something to do, a deadline to meet. Again, I'm that person who needs a bit of a kick up the backside sometimes. And when Bruce pitched it to us, he was explaining this thing, and he's like, you know what, I can see you're not really sure about this. Why don't you just come on Saturday? Just come and see what it involves. And it's so simple. Everyone arrives there. There's volunteers. There's a couple of cones just to show you where you start. Off you go, 5 kilometers. There's a pre-mapped out route, and you come back in your own time, and you get a time, and you get a token, and that token, when you start and when you finish, is your personal time. And then you get your results every week. And I think that sense of achievement was like, hey, I did something. You know, if you walked it in an hour or you ran it in 30 minutes, that for me became something of meaning. It was something where my wife and I went initially. She dropped off the wagon a little bit, but we also had a newborn at that stage. So sometimes I would give her a break and take him within the pram. There were times I had to feed him on the run or the walk, and it was what it was. But it just became this thing of purpose of, okay, every Saturday at 8 o'clock, that's where I'm going and that's what I'm doing. And then from there, I had a friend who was a trail runner, one of my best friends who lives in Australia now. He was quite a serious runner, and he was like, why don't you try 10Ks? And I was like, this is like a year or two down the line. I was like, no, that's a bit too far for me. Like, I'm not going to, you know, my history, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, no, just come do a second, like do park run, and then we'll do it again. We can even walk if you want.
Oh, yes.
And we ended up running slowly, but we ran the full 10. And I was like, oh, I could do that. And then that became this kind of borderline obsession with parkrun in particular, and trying to do new venues and get around the country. And there's this whole community around it. So, you know, it doesn't have to be parkrun. You know, there's a lot of now smaller run clubs, and running has just exploded as a sport. For me, it's literally changed my life. I think the constant movement, the sense of my heart can do this, it's more capable. And it's a segue to then, you know, the furthest I've run is a 21K. I figured that's good enough for me. Like, I don't need to go further than that. Outside of the half Ironman, but that was a once-off, you know.
Right, Durban.
We did Mossel Bay. Yeah.
Oh, God,
yes.
that's heavy.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a bit of a hilly course, but exercise everything, man. Like that's a game changer. And if you can just get yourself to start, doesn't matter how fast or far you go. It's just that you move your body, because there's something physiological that, again, that vagus nerve, your muscle movement, the heart flowing better, the weight loss, the feeling of confidence, the feeling of achievement. There's so much to it that changes the game mentally that I can't imagine a life without it now.
Oh, lovely. You talk about nutrition.
Yes.
Yeah, so say a bit more.
Yeah, I think outside of the brain and some of the traumas in that, I've seen a lot of research and studies around how so much of your anxiety stems from your gut health. And so people often focus on what they're eating as opposed to nurturing their gut. And I think the type of foods often in the world, and especially in the industry I work, so much is about your macros and how much protein you're getting in, the argument about what's a better fuel source of fat and carbohydrates and all that sort of stuff. For me, you know, I don't believe there's a blanket approach to nutrition for everybody. I think you need to understand your own body. I even have certain restrictions. I don't have allergies per se, but because I'm on warfarin after the heart surgery, you have to be careful of taking too many leafy greens and too much vitamin K, not too much yogurt, avocado, that sort of thing. So things that are good for you, normally you would prescribe that to everybody. You're like, why wouldn't you take those things? Whereas for me, I've got to kind of manage. I can take it, but not too much. If I have avo every day, the vitamin K inside there starts to impact your warfarin levels and how thick your blood is. But getting back to nutrition, I think the more you nurture your gut health, the better your mental state will be. And again, with all of these strategies, it's not like, okay, if you fix that, your anxiety will be gone. It's just one of the many things you have in your arsenal, so to speak. But nutrition's also been a game changer for me in terms of how you feel and perform.
How do we get to this gut health right?
For me, it's been probiotics. I think that's been a big thing. But obviously, I'm still a firm believer in diet first and food first. So there's a lot of supplements, and that's an industry I'm in. So it's not a plug for our industry. I mean, we've learned to appreciate what's good and what works and what are the required labels and that sort of thing. Probiotics has been a game changer for me, not just in terms of anxiety, but because of the lymphoma that I had in my lower intestine. So I really had to hone in on what can I take, what can't I take, disturbances there, not having too much meat, which ordinarily, whether you vegan or a meat lover, you've got to monitor how much protein you get in. So a lot of people refer to meat, but for me, I went through a stage where my gut wasn't in a good way, so I had to kind of reduce the amount of red meat I had, more fish and chicken and eggs and those sort of things. But yeah, I think in terms of your gut, there's things that help. There's probiotics and there's things like that can help your gut health, but also the types of foods, fermented foods, things like kefir, certain types of yogurt. Just that general feeling of, I'm sure you've had a big meal where afterwards you just feel so bloated and full.
Yeah.
Your body will tell you what's not good for you. You don't need a doctor or a scientist to, you know. I think there are dietitians and experts you can rely on. So I think that's probably always the first port of call, is just to go check what's good for your body, you know, find out what foods are good for you. But the typical things like meat, dairy, bread, heavy carbohydrates, all these things that make you feel heavy and bloated and slow and sluggish. That's your body saying, listen, too much of that. I'm not saying, I'm not demonizing them, but I'm just saying, just monitor how much you have of all of those things. And if it's not those things for you, maybe your gut is far more tolerant of it. I know guys who can live off carnivore diets and they've lost a lot of weight and gained a lot of muscle, and that's great, but it's not for everybody, you know.
You speak about alcohol, that it can give you this early sense of calm, but it's destructive.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think there's two parts to that. The one is, I mean, I do mention I don't drink a lot of alcohol. I don't not drink alcohol. I'll have the odd glass of wine and that sort of thing. If a couple of mates say, let's have a beer together, I'll do it. But I don't go out and actively seek how much I'm going to drink every weekend. And I think more and more people are realizing that it causes instability in your psyche, the kind of highs and lows of that. In the same way caffeine would work, you've got this instant energy, but there's that crash. So you kind of just have to moderate how much you use and how often. Anytime I've ever drank too much, and there's been very few occasions, I often have disruptive sleep. I wake up in the middle of the night, I feel grumpy the next day. So outside of that hangover that everyone speaks about, there's almost like a mental hangover as well, where it sometimes takes you a couple of days to recover. And there's more and more research showing how destructive that can be for not just your mental health, but your physical health. So again, nothing wrong with it, but it's a slippery slope. And I think for me, I started to realize that you got to be careful when that becomes an escape or when that becomes a form of coping. And again, mine didn't come from, oh my gosh, I'm going to drink myself into a state. For me, it was just taking some of the homeopathic remedies where they had a little bit of alcohol in a very low dosage. But that calming effect of probably the combination, it was probably the aromatherapy or the sort of tissue salts and things like that. Those were helpful, but the liquid ones often had a bit of alcohol in. And then I started to notice that I was craving the taste of that, and I associated the relief. So I started switching to some of the tissue salts themselves and things like that, where there's no alcohol in it, and it provides a similar effect. But it just made me realize how I can see why that feeling of calm and relaxing was becoming more from the alcohol, not just from the total solution. So that was just something that I discovered. But I've also just seen, unfortunately, lives and families ruined, not in my own family, but externally, by people with addiction, with what happens, you know, you lose a bit of control, you make mistakes, you do silly things. So it's almost like if you're in a delicate mental state, it's not an enabler. And in the book, I write about enablers and disablers, and it's certainly a disabler at the heart of sort of compromised mental health. But even when you're strong, you know, it's not going to serve you, at least not excessively. To have the odd glass of champagne and celebrate, by all means, it's nothing wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I just think you got to, everything in moderation, you know.
100%. You talk about sleep, and that's when I'm like, where do I hide?
Sleep is I mean, I speak about exercise. Like there's some pillars of, you know, if you want to get things right, and it's quite a tricky one, because I appreciate that at times, certainly for me, when I was really battling with the worst types of anxiety, you don't sleep as well just by nature, because you'll wake up in that fight or flight response. And then you get up and you sometimes walk around. I mean, mine was as drastic as asking my wife to, I think, especially closer to heart surgery before and afterwards, it was like, I need to go to hospital, something's wrong. And there was never anything wrong. That was the frustrating thing. And I could sense that even from her. She's been an incredible rock to me and such a powerhouse of strength and understanding and support. But it must have been very frustrating to be like, you know, nothing's wrong. And this guy's just going through all the motions of something's this fight or flight that is triggered by a sensation, a flutter of the heart or a pain in the arm or deferred something. And, for me, that's, it caused sleep disturbance firstly. But yeah, it's just that thing of you need to know some of those pillars: your nutrition, your sleep, your exercise. So those are some of the things we have control over. Yeah. And I think a big part of managing anxiety is regaining control, or at least a sense of control, because that's what anxiety does to you at its worst. Is it feels like you've lost control. Something's just overtaking you, and you can't get it back. And I think to get the control back, you've got to get those pillars right. And sleep, to your point, is critical. we all struggle with it, especially if you're ambitious. And even in writing the book, I had to be careful of how I manage my energy and time, especially with a full-time job. But sleep is a game changer. You know, you at the best of times, even when you're not compromised in terms of anxiety or depression, you need that to perform, to exercise, to work hard. And you feel it, right? I mean, you know, when you've had a tough week of 5-6 hours a night or less. Some people get less than that. I don't know how they operate. But most people need at least 6 to 7 hours. I would say if you're struggling mentally, try aim for that 8.
Okay.
And again, if you need some sort of gentle support to do that, there's products out there that can do that. But there's also this wonderful experience where if you're exercising and you're working hard in the day, that combination will fatigue you more generally. So by the time, these days, by the time I hit the sack, I'm dead, like I'm out. So that's a great feeling. I still need to work on my hours though.
Yes.
I think I need to try aim for the 7 to 8. I'm still sitting in that 6 to 7 bracket.
Yeah.
But just that mental clarity, that calm comes from not having this nervous system that's compromised. And I think that's where the sleep and the rest. So even if you're not sleeping, just rest, lie down. If it takes you a while to go to sleep, put something on to watch, whatever. I know there's this thing about blue light, but sometimes people just need a stimulus, a book, something to fatigue you or to distract your brain and to just get some sort of calm as well.
As we conclude, you know, just if there's one message that you want people to take away from listening to us, or just even seeing the book, what might we...
It's hard to pinpoint one, but I think the premise of it is, you know, I can't promise this to anybody, but my ambition for the book is the line that I referred to in there, which is healed, healthy, and stronger from the book. And I suppose stronger is the key word because, you know, are we ever really fully healed? I don't know. I think it's more a case of improvement and gradual change. But that would be my hope, is that someone takes just one line, one word, one anecdote, one of my stories, one of my coping mechanisms, and says, wow, that really helped me. Like I really wanted to help people. That's my sincere hope. And that they can just make one change to improve the next day. It's a gradual process. It's something you've got to work at continuously. And even when you climb the mountain and you feel successful, there'll be another one around the next quarter. Yeah. And the second and probably last thing I would say is just to not avoid hard things. Like my life has been around protecting myself from danger, from fear, from, you know, these false worries that we have in our lives, and it's to kind of run towards the hardness because it will find you anyway. It certainly found me multiple times, and some people maybe need that. They need to be thrown into the furnace to figure out how to manage their way out the fire. So nice analogy for the book, but I hope we can get some out there. Happy to leave some copies if you want to give some away to your listeners.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can definitely give away some of the copies to our listeners. Maybe we'll find a way. We'll find a way to give some of them away. But just before we give them away, where can people get them legitimately? Where can people buy the books?
So far from what I've seen, and again, Tracy McDonald publishers and her team have been phenomenal. The publicist, everybody that's been involved has been great, but it's available at Exclusive Books. It's also on Loot. It's on Amazon Kindle, on Apple Books. So yeah, most of the leading book retailers are out there.
We do expect an audio version, I imagine, coming soon.
Yes, yeah, that's the next step. So once I sell enough, then I'll make sure I invest into that, because I know a lot of people like myself are actually lazy readers. So you kind of want the part where you can listen to it. But yeah, just thanks again, Manda, for keeping me on the show and getting me hard. And just the opportunity to talk about something that's really close to my heart, and hopefully something we can help a lot of people struggling out there today.
Excellent. Brandon, it's been an honor, and thank you for your work. Thank you for writing this book, and we wish you all the best in your book tour.
Thank you so much, man.
Lovely.
Appreciate it.
Cool stuff. We have Brandon in studio, ladies and gentlemen, right here at SuperLead Studios. Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys.
Cool stuff.